Hello, good morning. You're watching Market Cafe on ET Now. I'm Vinny Motiwala, with me Shreyanti Singh as well. And this is a show where we will be taking you all in the next 1 hour through all the important updates that have happened in the global market. How is the Indian market expected to open, and which are the important stocks that you should be keeping on your radar? So let's get started. And Shreyanti, when you're looking at it in terms of the US markets, mixed close is what we could say coming in. Dow Jones, a bit of a decline, but other than that, Nasdaq, S&P 500 managing to hold on to some bit of a gain.
Absolutely, that just about sums it up. But let's also take a look at the price action that we saw coming in for the US markets. Now, when you take a look at US stock futures, though, you're looking at not much of a change coming in, be it an S&P 500, Nasdaq. They closed at fresh record highs, but then when you take a look at the futures movement coming in, for Dow Jones, it was about 0.1% uptick coming in, S&P 500 as well as Nasdaq, similar moves coming in on the futures basis. But let's take a look at the regular day trading session then, and when you take a look at the S&P 500 as well as Nasdaq composite, they both closed Monday's trading session at all-time highs, like I mentioned, each rising slightly as investors awaited key inflation data as well as earnings results due out later this week as well. So when you take a look at the broad market index, that closed with an uptick of about 0.1% thereabout, and when you take a look at tech heavy Nasdaq as well, you're looking at gains coming in of about 0.3% thereabout. Now Dow Jones was the one that was a laggard, like when he mentioned. So you saw like about a 0.1% uptick coming in for Dow Jones as well. And the S&P 500 continues its advance as easing pricing pressures as well as slowing growth have investors increasingly optimistic that the Federal Reserve will soon start to ease up on monetary policy. But others who are concerned a correction is on the horizon are urging investors to broaden their exposure. So that's largely the market setup at this point. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell will testify this week before Congress as part of a semi-annual update on monetary policy, and Powell will be speaking first to the Senate Banking Committee on Tuesday, followed by an appearance Wednesday before the House Financial Services Committee as well. Now, there's key inflation data that is on the deck, that is due out later this week, with the June Consumer Price Index on Thursday, as well as the Producer Price Index on Friday. And on the earnings front, you also have PepsiCo as well as Delta Airlines that are set to post their results on Thursday. So quite some events to keep an eye on this week, and bank earnings results from Citigroup as well as JP Morgan Chase are also due out, capping off a volatile trading day as investors reacted to a surprise win for the left in the country's parliamentary election. More on that election later, but the CAC 40 also provisionally closed down lower. So that largely is the update coming in, Vinny, as far as global markets as well as Europe is concerned. But tell us about oil then.
Absolutely. So when you're looking at oil prices this morning and how they've opened up, quite subdued in trade, down 0.1% is what Brent crude oil is doing. $85 per barrel mark is what Brent crude oil is trading at, while WTI crude oil at $82 per barrel mark. Now, what is the reason that we're keeping, that bit of a subduedness that you're seeing for the oil prices? Is obviously the hurricane that's there in Texas. That's a worry coming in because that could hit the US demand, as well as in terms of Gaza peace talks. That is what everyone is keeping an eye out on. Now, obviously, mainly because of the hurricane which is there in Texas side, and maybe it could hit those Texas oil infrastructure. A bit of a worry in terms of demand, supply, all that surely becomes a concern. So everyone's keeping an eye out on that as well. And obviously Middle East tensions and how that is shaping up in terms of peace talks is a key factor to watch out for. Moving on to gold prices, where gold is headed. Now, gold overnight saw a bit of a drop, but this morning has opened up with some bit of a gain of 0.3% in trade. Gold trading at $2,369 per ounce mark as of now. Silver also chopped up in trade, managing to hold on to gains of almost 0.7% this morning. So yes, that's how the commodities are shaping up. Gold surely seeing an uptick. Brent crude oil a bit subdued in trade this morning.
Well, absolutely. And the Hurricane Beryl has there are 2.6 million people in Texas that are out of power at this point because of this hurricane. So definitely a key event to watch out for in terms of updates. Now, in terms of other events that you should be keeping an eye on, monthly MF flows are something that you should be keeping an eye on. And additionally, in terms of global cues, you do have US consumer credit data. And in terms of Q1 earnings, then there's a host of counters to keep an eye on. So the likes of HFCL, Delta Corp, Shalby, GM Breweries as well. And on account of corporate action, specifically AGMs, you do have counters like JSW Steel, JK Cement, Persistent Systems, Central Bank of India and Jyoti Structures that will be in focus on account of all of that. Now, Kalpataru Projects is also mulling fundraise, so that counter will be in the spotlight, and so will KDDL because there's a share buyback that is on the cards there as well. In Infra, InvIT also has a trust distribution, and it's the last day to buy a host of counters to be eligible for dividends, so the likes of DCM Shriram, Deep Industries, Polycab India and JK Cement as well as Persistent Systems should be on your radar on account of all of that. Now, the lock-in period also ends for SAR Polymers, so that one will also be in focus. And in terms of other events, there's a host of events that we're keeping on our radar. So Rahul Gandhi is visiting Rai Bareli. On the political front, that is in focus, and Fed Chair Jerome Powell, like I told you, will be speaking to FOMC member Michelle Bowman to speak. And also, you also have Fed Chair Jerome Powell's speech, like I mentioned, and is scheduled today as well as tomorrow. That will be in focus, and Michelle Bowman's speech as well, since they're an FOMC member, as well as US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen's speech as well. That will be in focus, Vinny.
Absolutely, key events. And also, let's not forget, PM Modi's the 2-day visit continues in Russia. So, more updates just on that front on what is happening. He'll be visiting Austria as well. So, what is the path going forward? Any new word coming in there is something we are watching out for. Let's move on. And the street has also keenly been watching the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell's testimony before Congress today amid the elevated interest rates and banking concerns. Some senators like Elizabeth Warren have been pushing for rate cuts as cost of living soars. Now, Jerome Powell is likely to tell lawmakers that Federal Reserve officials need further confirmation that inflation is slowing before they are in a position to cut rates, even with the evidence of a building of a softer growth and employment.
Moving on, then, there seems to be no stopping the AI rally. The biggest chipmaker in the world, TSMC, which has over 50% market share, hit a $1 trillion market value after analysts boosted projections. Now, the chipmaker's shares surged nearly 5%, reflecting its key role as a supplier for Apple and Nvidia. Meanwhile, Corning shares jumped 12% as well after raising its second quarter guidance, citing strong demand for its optical connectivity products used in AI networks as well.
And Paramount has agreed to merge with Skydance, ending months of negotiation. The deal involves an $8 billion investment from private equity firms and a $1.5 billion capital injection into Paramount, with Skydance founder leading the new company. However, regulatory approvals are pending, even as the management expects to close the merger by third quarter of 2025.
Moving on, then, President Joe Biden vowed to continue his re-election campaign despite concerns from some Democrats. The 81-year-old candidate challenged doubters to contest him at the Democratic National Convention. He also reassured donors and stated, "I am not going anywhere." And those were his exact words. This comes after a shaky debate performance against Donald Trump, prompting some Democrats to call US President Biden to step aside. However, a key strategist said that there is a 40% chance that Biden would not seek re-election.
And violent clashes have erupted on the streets of France after a shocking win for the left-wing coalition blocked the far right from taking power in the snap elections. Protesters could be seen launching flares, setting e-bikes on fire and clashing with the police as thousands of officers were deployed across France. The electoral outcome has left the country with an alarming possibility of a hung parliament, raising the possibility of a political instability.
Moving on, then, grand welcome for PM Modi by Russia, one of India's oldest allies, as he landed in Moscow for his first bilateral trip since coming to power last month. Over the course of the next 2 days, PM Modi and Russian President Putin are expected to address issues including Russia's ongoing war with Ukraine, sanctioned by the West, as well as bilateral trade. Ahead of the summit, President Putin also held a private dinner for PM Modi, over which the two discussed bilateral cooperation that has deepened in the recent past on the back of increased oil imports from Russia, and the talks likely to focus on economic issues including energy, trade, manufacturing, as well as fertilizers. are on the radar as well. We also caught up with Suresh Goyal, former ambassador, as well as Suhasini Heather, diplomatic editor at The Hindu, about the same. Listen in to what they had to say as well.
India and Russia are an important relationship, both in terms of global strategic metrics, as well as Central Asia. SCO is an example of that, and the India Pacific. Now, the fact is that Russia, even though far away from India Pacific, but Russia has a vision interest in playing a role in the Pacific. It's an important country. Russia-China partnership is an important factor, and therefore India has to be very, very cognizant of what Russia and China are all about, and therefore our traditional partnership, traditionally very, very warm partnership, strong partnership. Please remember 1971, when Russia actually and India, we were together in many ways. And therefore, I think we have to determine the relationship between India and Russia in its own metrics. And I think, therefore, for Prime Minister Modi to make the first bilateral visit to Russia immediately after re-election is an important indicator of the importance we attach to Russia.
Prime Minister Modi and President Putin are going to discuss in terms of dealing with the issues that have arisen from the Ukraine conflict. So things like food, fertilizer, and fuel security, things like the recruitment or the misleading of Indians to be recruited by the Russian military. And now we have seen the deaths of 4 Indians at the front line with Ukraine, something India wants to end right now, wants to see them get a military discharge as soon as possible. Talk about the delayed deliveries of Russian military hardware. And most of all, I think what is going to be at the top of the agenda is the economic issues arising, given the kind of worries about sanctions, Western sanctions on Indian companies, on Indian banks, how the two sides can work out payment mechanisms as well as trading facilitation so that Indian companies that are manufacturing much needed goods for Russia are able to send those and are able to offset the huge bilateral deficit right now caused by India's purchase of Russian oil. So,
okay, let's move on and talk about just an update coming in on Mumbai rainfalls. And yes, what we'd seen overnight was that heavy downpours had continued to cause some bit of a disruption. Train services were suspended in some parts due to the waterlogging on the tracks and stations. Now, the IMDb has issued a red alert in the city today, while state authorities ordered schools and colleges to shut in both Bombay and Pune. The weather department has also predicted heavy rainfall to continue at isolated spots of the city till the 12th of July. Several areas including Andheri, Kulla, Bhandup, King Circle, Vilepale and Dadar, among other locations, reported significant water accumulation, and over 50 flights have been cancelled. Traffic snarls expected to be a point of bother today. Remember that the state has also ordered a stay-at-home advisory for the people. As of now, we're keeping an eye out on the update. Surely a red alert that's coming for Mumbai, hoping for some respite there. But rains also is something that we need. So yes, we're keeping an eye out on that.
But not as much, Vinny, because the IMD's red alert is definitely quite worrying at this point. With that, let's take a quick break. On the other side, we'll see you with the Asian market check.
In upcoming budget, government is likely to increase the coverage of Ayushman Bharat health insurance scheme.
The schemes could be focused more on small companies, small private sector companies.
The government is likely to increase agriculture credit target in the upcoming budget.
The government is planning to give a big boost to R&D, research and development, when it comes to defense sector.
In upcoming budget, government will announce coverage of senior citizens above age of 70 years also under the Ayushman Bharat.
The agriculture credit target is likely to be hiked by almost 20%.
This announcement is likely to happen in upcoming union budget.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying tuned in. Well, as promised, let's take a look at the Asian markets then. And Asia Pacific markets opened higher, tracking gains on Wall Street that saw the S&P 500 as well as the Nasdaq Composite closing at record highs overnight. So let's take a look at Nikkei then, and Japan's Nikkei on your screens is rising a little over 1% thereabout on your screens, up about 1.2% as we speak, and South Korea's Kospi as well. Let's also take a look at that one. That one is right now, it has a downtick coming in of about 0.1%. Previously, it was up about 0.3% thereabout as shares of heavyweight Samsung Electronics gained about 0.6%, even as the company's largest union continued its three-day strike as it seeks better pay, and even Hyundai, on the other hand, reached a tentative wage agreement with its labor union, averting a strike as well, and the shares of that company as well slid 1.6% thereabout. And right now, you do see that Kospi is not doing all that much though. Now, when you take a look at Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index, then that is down about 0.3%. Previously, the cuts were a little deeper, but now it's pared some of those losses and currently down about 0.3%. Now, let's also take a look at Shanghai then. Flat with a shade of red was where it was just a few minutes ago. Currently, it's up about 0.1%. So that's Shanghai on your screens. And let's also take a look at ASX 200 because that one is firmly in the green at this point when compared to the other indices, and that is up about 0.8% thereabout, even as the country's consumer sentiment for July dipped 1.1% compared with 1.7% increase in the previous month as well. And traders in Asia, of course, mind you, will also be watching out for Australia's business confidence data due later in the day. So that largely is the handover coming in as far as Asian markets are concerned. Now back home, we shut shop around the 24,300 levels. And currently, in terms of what the Nifty implied is penciling in, we're looking at a slight uptick coming in on a spot basis, but not much of a good start is what we're looking at both on a spot and futures basis, Vinny.
Absolutely, but let's move on and look at what's the important update that's actually important guest that we have lined up for you all on the market today. Starting at 9:20 a.m., we do have Sridhar Sivaram, who is the investment director at Enam Holdings, talking about what is one watching out for in this market just before the budget. What are you keeping an eye out on? Other than that, 9:30 a.m., where is the value in the market? We have Purin Juvelia from Equity Intelligence India joining in with us to talk about commodities, metals, what's happening on that front. At 9:40 a.m., Rakesh Arora, founder of Go India Stocks, will be joining us to talk about that. Moving on to power demand, how is that going? Should we expect a surge? What is the strategy going forward? 10 a.m. we have Amrit Lal Meena, Coal Secretary, joining with us at that time. And what is happening for Suraj Estates in terms of their launch pipeline? What are we watching out for? Rahul Thomas, Whole-Time Director, joining in at 10:20 a.m. to talk about all of that.
Alright then, that's a power-packed lineup for you right there. But with that, let's also...
Welcome back. You're watching Market Cafe on ET now. Let's move on and talk about some updates that are coming in overall in terms of the budget front. Now, 2 weeks just to go before Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will table the union budget for FY25, and we've got exclusive details on this one, especially coming in across sectors. Now, in the midst of a fast deteriorating global security environment, the Finance Minister could maybe give a big boost to the defense industry, announcing many schemes, especially focusing on the Make in India theme. What more can we be expecting from the defense side? Sumit Chaturvedi is joining in with us to give us those details on what is the expectation there. Sumit?
Well, this time the schemes could be focused more on small companies, small private sector companies. That is one important takeaway that could come in the budget this time. Also, the government is planning to give a big boost to R&D, research and development, when it comes to defense sector, because that is something which is clearly not up to the mark and in which there is a lot of scope. So keeping that in mind, Make in India, more Make in India schemes can be announced. Also, there can be more relaxation when it comes to export of defense equipment, and that can be, there can be a new list when it comes to new weapons and products as far as exports are concerned. If we give a overall picture, well, Indian government has a target of exports worth 50,000 crore rupees by FY29 when it comes to defense sector. Currently, it's 21,000 crore rupees. In the interim budget this time, the budget was for 6 trillion rupees. The overall the defense sector, if you talk about 6 lakh, so there's a lot of scope for increase in the defense budget, and that's going to be announced this time.
All right, thanks Sumit for all of those important details coming in. Well, it's raining exclusives on ET now in the lineup to the union budget, and we learned from reliable sources that the housing sector is likely to get substantial push in the upcoming budget. The outlay for housing will be up substantially. Prakash Priyadarshi filed this report earlier. Take a look.
Yes, we are learning from our sources that the government is likely to make some announcement for the housing sector in the upcoming budget. In fact, a special focus would be provided to the affordable housing segment. In fact, ministries such as Rural Development Ministry and the Ministry of Housing Affairs have sent their separate proposal to the Ministry of Finance. We are given to understand that the government is likely to make big allocation under rural and urban housing schemes. As you are aware, that the government has already made an announcement to launch a new housing scheme for urban poor and middle class in the interim budget, but it had not made any allocation under this scheme. In fact, both these ministries, Ministry of Finance and Housing Affairs, were working on the modalities of this scheme, which have now been finalized, and we are now given to understand that allocation would be made, which could be in a range of 50 to 60,000 crore under this scheme. In fact, the beneficiaries under this scheme would be given benefit of interest subvention, and that could be in a range of 3 to 6%. Along with that, the sources are also informing that higher allocation could be made for the PM Awas Yojana rural as well by 50 to 20%, which is around 80,000 crore at this point of time. And the government is hoping to achieve 3 crore additional construction of affordable houses across the country in next 5 years. Therefore, higher allocation could be made. Along with that, several state governments have submitted their proposal to the government in order to increase allocation of the affordable houses. Therefore, fund allocation is likely to be increased in the upcoming budget.
Okay, and more updates coming in on the budget front. What is the expectation there? And in order to provide better healthcare to senior citizens of the country and increase penetration of insurance in the upcoming budget, the government may increase the scope of its flagship scheme, Ayushman Bharat Health Insurance Scheme, and announce the launch of National Health Claim Exchange. Anurag Shah is joining in with us to give us those details. Anurag?
Government is likely to make announcement related to health insurance and healthcare in upcoming budget. Most important one is related to the coverage of Ayushman Bharat Health Insurance Scheme. As per our sources, in upcoming budget, government is likely to announce increase in coverage for senior citizen also. Senior citizen above age of 70 will also be covered. Remember, in manifesto during Lok Sabha election, BJP has announced that all senior citizens will be covered under Ayushman Bharat Health Insurance Scheme. Ayushman Bharat is a flagship healthcare scheme of Government of India, which covers 50 crore people below poverty line with a sum assured of 5 lakh rupees. Another major announcement likely to be announced is launch of National Health Claim Exchange. National Health Claim Exchange is a online platform for claim settlement. It will be a one point contact for insurance company, policy holders, hospitals and TPA. And insurance companies are hopeful that if National Health Claim Exchange got implemented, overall fraudulent claim in health insurance will decrease and they will pass on benefit to policy holder. All claims through National Health Exchange will be cashless and in a longer run it will be much beneficial for all stakeholders. So these two important announcements are likely to be made in upcoming union budget.
All right, thanks Anurag for those details coming in. Well, in the lead up to the union budget, we're keeping an eye on a host of updates coming in. An equal, if not higher surplus transfer by the RBI in the current fiscal will help government lower fiscal deficit target, and that is the word coming in from a note by SBI Research. The note also says that the government is expected to increase its capex target to 11.8 trillion versus 11.1 trillion that it announced in the interim budget as well. Anurag Joshi is standing by with more details. Anurag, take us through what exactly are the key takeaways from this note.
State Bank of India's Economic Research Unit expects the government to trim its fiscal gap target for this fiscal year to less than 5%. SBI Research expects the government to budget a fiscal deficit of 4.9% for FY25, and this compares to a provisional estimate of 5.6% for FY24 and an interim budget estimate in February of 5.1% for the fiscal gap. The government is likely to trim this gap because of the robust goods and services taxes collection that have taken place. It may be mentioned that last year the government had reported record GST collections for several months. And the other key factor why the government will be able to narrow this deficit will be the dividend payments that are likely from the RBI and from the state-run firms. SBI research also mentions that the government may increase the capex spending to closer to 12 lakh crore rupees from 11.1 lakh crore rupees that was budgeted in the interim budget. The total capex spending could rise to over 19 lakh crore, while the nominal GDP of the country could be in double digits, and this could be at 11%.
On that note, we're going to slip into a very short break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with more updates after this break.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying tuned in. Well, let's take a look at which stocks you should keep on your radar bright and early this morning. And Jinay is standing by with just that list.
Will be in focus as the total volume handle for Q1 FY 2025 company reported was around 11.6 lakh TEUs, which was up about 6% year-on-year basis. Next up will be Forgings. The company have approved a bonus share issue in a ratio of 1:1, and for this the record date will be 16th of July. Moving on, VA Tech will be in focus as a company has approved sale of 100% sales stake in Vabag Waters Services SRL Romania for the consideration of 1.2 million euros. Moving on the back of fundraising, Nestle India will be in focus as company has approved borrowing of amount not exceeding 2,000 crores. Sanghi Industries have approved allotment of NCDs aggregating up to 500 crores on private placement basis. And lastly, Pitti Engineering will be in focus as company has approved fundraising via QIP for not exceeding 360 crores, and the floor price for the same is 1054.25 per share.
Okay, Janay, thank you so much for that. Keeping an eye out on all those stocks on the back of news flows. But let's move on. And with 2 weeks, just 2 weeks to go for the union budget, let's understand what's in store for the market. According to the historical trends, what is that one could be expecting, the impact of the budget that one could watch out for over the last few years. What's the trend there? Ansh is joining in with us to give us all these details. Ansh, good morning.
Good morning, Vinny. So we have collected data of last 10 years, and as per that, historically market movement have varied significantly with notable declines and gains actually. But if we start with the declines before the budget on 1 month basis, then in some years there have been sharp declines, such as in 2020 with 4.3%, move in 2016 7.6%, and 2023 with 2.7%. Now this drop suggests cautious and negative sentiment ahead of budget announcement. But at the same time, we have seen gains before budget as well on a monthly basis. Conversely, other years saw positive movement like 2017 with 6.5% increase, in 2018 5.6%, whereas in 2020 1.3%. Now these gains indicate optimism and positive expectation before the budget. But overall, if you see the market performance have been very unpredictable, reflecting varying investor expectation and reaction to anticipated fiscal policies.
Right, and thanks, Ansh, for that update coming in. Let's also get us the F&O snapshot as well, because that is also something that we're keeping an eye on.
Right, so let's start with what FIs did in the previous session. In index future, we are seeing that they have covered their long position by around 7,200 contract. They added some shorts as well, but net to net, we are seeing a decline of around 7,300 contract, due to which the total long has inched a bit lower from 83.8% to 83.6%, but still the total long is at very high. It's almost around 3-year high level, indicating strong optimism in the market. If we talk about Nifty, then as you can see in the chart as well, Nifty has been actually consolidating from last 4 sessions, indicating very neutral sentiment in the market, whereas in index option we are seeing some mild put writing happening at 24,300, indicating some support around this level. Now if we talk about Nifty Bank, then on a broader basis, Nifty Bank has been consolidating for last 10 consecutive sessions in a wide range actually, with having a good support at around that 51,900 level, which is also a breakout level to Nifty Bank. Also today we have Fin Nifty weekly option expiry, so we may see some good volatility in banking stock. Now, if we talk about Nifty Bank's index future, we are seeing open interest going up by around 0.8%, indicating some short build-up, which is a bit of negative sign. Whereas on option front, we are seeing call writing happening at that level of 52,500, indicating option traders expecting resistance around this level. Lastly, let's have a quick view on few F&O stocks that are in focus, and we are seeing significant long build-up happening in REC, ONGC and Chambal Fertilizer, where short build-up for Bank of Baroda, Oberoi Realty and Divis Labs. So keep an eye on the stocks.
Keeping an eye out on all the stocks on in the world of F&O as well. But let's move on. And GMR Airports, that's the one we're keeping an eye out on. It's in focus on the back of a management meet. Now, most of the traffic on T1 has been temporarily moved to T2 and T3 post the closure. What will be the impact on terms of the revenue for this? Shesha is joining in with us with all those key takeaways. Shesha?
Well, yes, Jeffries met with the management of GMR Infra, and we have some important takeaways with respect to the shutting down of Terminal 1 of Mumbai International Airport, where they say that most of the operations have been moved temporarily from Terminal 1 to T2 and T3. They also say that T1 only handles domestic operations, so international operations and other revenue streams for the company have not been impacted. They say management is also working with concessionaries at T2 and T3 to ramp up services for increased passenger flow and allay the impact of airport revenue. As far as reopening of Terminal 1 is concerned, they say there is no visibility as to when Terminal 1 will reopen, and it is under comprehensive examination of the structure as of now. They also said that Terminal 2 has the capacity to cater to increased demand, so they have sufficient passenger facilities with respect to food and beverages, lounge facility, retail, etc., which is adequate to cater to incremental passenger traffic. So there are no concerns with respect to services that are available at T2 and T3, and on the back of this commentary that is coming from GMR Airports management, the stock will be in focus today.
Really, thanks Ashisha for that update coming in. Let's also take a look at what the brokerages are saying bright and early this morning, and let's also take a look at the view coming in on AFL. And what Citi is saying is that they're initiating a buy with a target of 1,600. They're saying that it's positively leveraged to digital ad spends as well, and in terms of the US recovery, that is something that they see on the annual as well. India recovery is something that they see following the US recovery. So that's the update coming in as far as AFL is concerned. In terms of estimates, they're also expecting a 20% top line CAGR, and in terms of margins, they see an expansion to the tune of about 400 basis points over financial year 24 to 27. So that's about AFL. Let's also take a look at what Citi had to say about Imami then, because they're maintaining a buy, and they've also hiked the target to 900 rupees from 650 rupees. In terms of the growth outlook, that is something that they see improving. And in terms of the key drivers for this growth outlook, they see macro as well as self-help initiatives making it to their list, and growth acceleration is something that they see driving earnings as well, earnings upgrades rather, and promoter pledge issues they see as largely getting addressed at this point. And in terms of the broader sector re-rating, that is something that they're also penciling in. Now, in terms of key catalysts coming in terms of what Citi is saying on Imami, they're looking at strong growth in the seasonal portfolio. They're looking at recovery in macro-dependent brands as well. And margin expansion in organized channel is also something that they're keeping on their radar in terms of key growth levers for the counter. Let's also move on and take a look at what Citi had to say about Persistent Systems then. And they're maintaining a sell with a target of 3,080. In fact, interestingly, they've also opened a 30-day negative catalyst watch for this one. And in terms of what else they're saying, they're talking about how growth in Q1 will likely be strong. Margins, though, they see largely declining sequentially. And market may be concerned on financial year 25 margin guidance was also something that they're saying. So that's coming out as a key takeaway of their note. And the deal TCV then that they see will largely remain in range of last few quarters. So that is something that Citi is penciling in as far as Persistent Systems is concerned. Lastly, let's also take a look at chemical sector and what UBS is saying about that one. Now, pressure from Chinese capacity additions is something that they're keeping on their radar, but they do say that the worst may be over, and the risk from trade war escalation is something that they have on their radar, with some buffers also coming in. And in terms of Chinese companies, then they see setting up capacities abroad, and that is something that they're keeping on their radar as well. In terms of demand picture, then they're looking at how the near-term demand would largely remain weak, and cyclical upturn expectation in 2024 is something that has largely receded. So they're maintaining their stance rather on a host of counters. So they have a buy rating on PI Industries with a target of 4,800 and a buy rating on Naveen Fluorine as well, and they have a sell rating on both Aarti Industries as well as Gujarat Fluoro. So that largely is the handover coming in terms of what UBS is saying about chemical sector, Winnie, but which are the ones that you're keeping an eye on?
Absolutely. So we have NBFCs that's going to be in focus on the back of Morgan Stanley's note. Now, there are two negatives they've given. One is for LIC Housing and Aavas Financiers. For LIC Housing, they believe that there could be a muted loan growth that one could see in Q1. For Aavas, they're saying that its valuations are very expensive compared to peers. So both of these are negative for them. While in terms of PNB Housing as well as Aptus Value, they both are positive for year. PNB Housing, they believe the loan growth, the retail loan book growth will start seeing a pickup in Q1. Risk reward is attractive. And for Aptus Value, they believe the loan growth momentum will pick up too. Solid performance is what they're expecting in Q1 from the NBFCs. Moving on, we have BofA's strategy note on India, where they expect Q1 could overall see a strong earnings coming in, especially led by financials, energy, IT, telecom. That will be driving their earnings season. They're expecting Nifty earnings to be at 17% growth on a year-on-year basis. So yes, the preferred pick comes in from financials, industrials, IT, and discretionary side is what they are looking at. Other than that, we also have Godrej Consumers Q1 update in line with what the street came in. So Morgan Stanley is maintaining their equal weight rating. They believe that this company could see a growth. They have given a target price of 1,231 rupees. So yes, overall in line, that is coming from Godrej Consumers. Lastly, Bernstein on IT also, when you're talking about it, they've come out with a note where they are giving the performance update, especially for Persistent Systems, initiating with an outperform rating, KPIT also an outperform rating, while Tata Elxsi, they believe, will be an underperform rating, and Coforge will be a market perform rating from Bernstein. That's coming on the IT side. They believe that these have a differentiated play that could come in. So keep an eye out on the IT companies. That's what we're looking at in terms of the brokerages this morning.
Well, all right, then that is what the brokerages are saying bright and early this morning. But with that, we're completely timed out on this edition of Market Cafe on ET Now. From me, Shreyanti Singh, Winnie Motiwala, as well as the entire team that put this show together, thank you so much for tuning in. You don't go anywhere, because the market takes all of the action forward.
Introducing the new Kushak. If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.